Okay, hello and welcome everyone to a special late night, at least in the Americas, edition of the Galactic Podracing Tournament. I'm Pistol Crepsy, also known as Ronnie, and I'm going to commentate this wonderful match for you. So, this match is potentially a very interesting one. It's the in the upper bracket, in the losers side of the bracket, and what that effectively means is this is an elimination game. So whoever loses this will be eliminated from the tournament, and the winner will go on to play Metallica 5167 in the next elimination match. This will be a best of 9 match. So the first racer to win 5 races will take the win. acE is probably the favorite to win this particular match. He's a very experienced player. He has had many world records throughout the history of the game. Hellfire or Dredge, as their name is on screen here, is also a very, very strong player. However, it remains to be seen whether they will be able to pull off this upset. The first track will be Bunta Classic, as you can see. Very interesting track for the first track. Usually with the first track, most players will attempt to pick a track that is relatively low risk. They don't really tend to want something that's very volatile. In this case, this is a very, very volatile track, and a lot of stuff can go wrong here. A lot of stuff can also go really, really right, and that's probably what our racers are banking on tonight. So it'll be interesting because, for another reason, because it looks like Dredge is picking Mars Glow here. Now, being the first track, there are no pod bans. All pod racers are open and available at this point. And the fastest one to use here would be Ben Podnaros, which was ace's pick. And it's what he's been warming up with. Ben Podnaros should be faster in theory, but maybe a bit harder to control, especially around the tighter, more winding sections of the track. And that's something that Mars Glow is going to be very adept at handling, at least in comparison to Ben. This track will kill you a lot, and we are, despite the high level of our two wonderful racers here, very likely to see possibly multiple deaths, possibly even multiple deaths per lap. And that's just the nature of this track. And off we go. All right, through the shortcuts, both of them getting very clean through the first shortcut. And coming into this first really bendy section up onto this ramp. This early part of the track is relatively easy compared to the later parts. However, this can still be very tricky here, especially with Ben, as you can very often scrape a wall. Dredge taking a slightly better line, and they're cutting across the off-road here, just to get a tighter line as well. And that was where you really see Ben's boost come in, since Ben didn't lose as much speed over the off-road, had about 100 units per second faster over that stretch. That definitely made up any lost time that might have been there due to lines. Coming through the Tusken Raider section, both racers looking extremely clean so far. First time passing these sand crawlers. They can be a little bit tricky, as depending on your speed, they can be in different spots. They're on a global timer and are not triggered by when you pass them. It's based on the overall amount of time. Dredge using a little bit of a jump there. And it looks like acE just raced a bit cleaner and will take about a 3-second lead coming off of the first lap. That can easily be made up with death or more, though. And with a track this punishing, that can happen. But it seems like acE is being extremely clean, and I'm not really seeing many mistakes from acE's gameplay at this point. Maybe a little bit shakier racing from Dredge overall, contributing to acE just continuously pulling ahead inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, as he might say. Almost mesmerizing to watch two high-level racers go at it. But it definitely seems like acE... Ooh, acE takes a little bit of a fire there, but it's no big deal. Won't lose too much time from that. And Dredge takes one anyway. Gets a good repair though. That will certainly help things. acE definitely seems to be managing his heat better as well. Not a lot of underheating coming out from him. Dredge is doing an okay job as well, but it looks like there might be a tiny bit of underheat there, which is not something you want to see happen. And again, a 138 is an extraordinarily strong lap. 141. acE has mounted his lead to about 6 seconds at this point, so deaths will be required to make this up. It could easily happen. Ooh, Dredge taking a little bit of a scary line there. acE making it ever so clean. A nice little hop over the off-road. Dredge following suit. But it just seems like acE's lead is too far to be made up without some sort of catastrophic mistake. And acE is not the type of player that tends to make such catastrophic mistakes. And coming through the final stretch, at least in regards to the actually difficult sections of the track. The rock field might be a little difficult, but probably not in comparison to anything else that this track has going on. It looks like acE will take it with an extraordinarily strong time here of 4:55, which is blazingly fast. Dredge's time, which looks like it will be a 5:04, is also extremely good. But 4:55 is absolutely incredible. And that will be the first point going to acE. Very, very interesting. All right, we should have bans coming up any second now. It'll be interesting to see what they ban and what they pick as well, because when you're at this high level, it can be difficult maybe to figure out a way to attack another high-level player. Hellfire starts us off by permabanning the Gauntlet, and acE permabans Executioner. Hellfire has permabanned Doug Derby, and acE permabans Vengeance. There is no love for Uvo 4 tonight. Doug Derby is also an interesting ban. acE does enjoy telling newer players that if they grind on Doug Derby, they will fast track their way to the higher levels of play. And I gotta agree, it's a really, really good track for improving. But perhaps that belies the fact that acE plays that track a lot. So maybe that's the idea from that ban. Hellfire temp bans Rats Terrell. acE temp bans Inferno. So with probably banking on either a Ben Mirror or some kind of Skips Force with a throwaway ban like Rats Terrell. Now Hellfire taking a minute to think about it. Looks like, ooh, hasn't been submitted quite yet, but it looks like Grabvine Gateway is the pick with no forces coming in. So it will be a Bullseye and Avoir mirror right here on Grabvine Gateway. Now, that's actually a pretty good pick. Grabvine Gateway is one of Hellfire's strongest tracks. And moreover than that, it's very possible that uh, picking the really, really difficult tracks, especially if you're comfortable on them, is the way to get the advantage over a high-level player. You can work your way ahead that way, because there's a higher likelihood of somebody making a mistake on a track like Grabvine as compared to something like, say, Aquelar's Classic, which is a lot more straightforward. And there's not a lot of room for mistakes in that kind of a track. So if you're playing against somebody that's got probably, an advantage over you or is favored over you in terms of skill, they're almost certainly going to beat you on that track. Now, they're also probable to beat you on a track like this as well, but with more opportunities to mess up. If you're particularly practiced at it, that's probably where your upset chances are going to be the highest. Yeah, indeed. I think actually acE did say that he's either drunk or was drunk and is possibly hungover, or possibly uh, bounced back wonderfully and is perfectly happy. Although he did note before the race that he wished he was sleeping right now, so maybe don't read too much into that, but it does seem like he's not at 100%. The section that acE is currently warming up in here, the swamp section of Grabvine Gateway, is one of the most difficult sections of track in the entire game. You can lose a lot of speed there, you can die there quite a lot. Getting through that efficiently is enormously difficult, and is one of the things that really separates the good players from the great players, at least when it comes to this track. But it's worth noting that every single part of this track will kill you, and it will kill you a lot. This is widely considered to be the most difficult track in the entire game, and that's because nearly every section and every single turn is brutal. Coming up. Interesting thing to note is that while both players are technically using Bullseye Navoir, Dredge is using the reskinned version of Bullseye Navoir named Sayunga. Sound off in the chat if you're a Sayunga enjoyer. Now coming through this section, affectionately referred to as Cheese Land, this is a very difficult section of track with a ton of difficult turns, but both players making it look absolutely easy. This is definitely something to watch. High-level players on the most difficult track. As they come around, about to enter the swamp, Dredge looks to have a small advantage in terms of time at this moment. And look at them, they're just banging it out. Yeah, that was clean from both racers, but Dredge looking ever so slightly stronger. Now rounding into the city. Excellent heat usage from Dredge. And also, not quite as good, but pretty solid as well from acE. The 124 first lap is absolutely insane. That is the sort of thing that you really want to see when you're Dredge here. About a 2-second lead on lap 1 already from Dredge. Definitely an intense one. Yeah, this shortcut opens up on lap 2 and it looks very clean for Dredge. acE takes it slightly cleaner, but with a little bit more braking. And Dredge just continues to build the lead. This is sort of the inverse of what we saw on track 1, the Bunta Classic, where acE was just building up a lead slowly over the course of the track. Now Dredge is doing it in return. It's definitely something to watch. Ooh. Getting in the swamp here. A little bit sketchy. A little bit sketchy, I won't lie. But Dredge bangs it out. And acE, similarly strong. And rounding back into the city. Seems like Dredge just continues to mount the lead ever stronger, with every difficult section that passes being slightly better. And a 1:22 second lap is blazingly fast. Have I already said blazingly? Probably. But that's going to be about a 4 or 5 second lead total for Dredge now, as neither player crashes in the first 2 laps, which is incredible for this track. This is the kind of racing we love to see. Dredge nails the shortcut on lap 2, or lap 3. Well, they also nailed it in lap 2, but... And now acE exiting Cheeseland. Very clean. This is really inspiring to watch. Alright, Dredge enters the final swamp section. They seem to be taking it more safely than usual, and it pays off as they successfully navigate it. acE also makes it through, but a little bit wider around most of the corners. Dredge quickly running out of places to fail. Looks like they're about to set an absolutely dominating record here. At least for most players, a 4:10 Grabvine Gateway in tournament is phenomenal. And that is the kind of W you want to see. Both players completely deathless through the first 2 tracks of this tournament. How often can you say that? Now, for reference, the tournament record on Grabvine Gateway is a 4:08. Now, our bans coming in for the next track. acE temporarily bans Juan Sandage, and Hellfire temporarily bans Baru Coast. Interested to see what acE picks. A lot of people might have been expecting acE to sweep Hellfire here, and as such, if acE was included in that, he may not have prepped too many picks and might have to fly by the seat of his pants here. But hopefully he at least thought of something. And it looks like we will be going to Death Row's Revenge. Full track, no banned racers, no forces, just Ben Quadinaros, Death Row's Revenge, 1v1. These players choosing to use the strongest pods they can against each other. It's quite inspiring. Yeah, I'm a little bit sad that we didn't get to see, like, back-to-back-to-back-to-back really brutal tracks. It would have been cool to see Baru Coast here, or Inferno even. But with Inferno being acE's temp ban, and it seems like Hellfire temp banning Baru Coast, we're probably not going to be seeing any more Barunda unless somebody goes for a Fire Mountain Rally pick. Now our racers will have a couple of minutes to warm up here. An interesting minor difference, entirely graphical in nature, that you might be seeing between the 2 players is that Dredge is playing with the fixed texture modification. It's an approved modification for the speedrunning of the game, which simply restores some broken textures that seem to have been messed up during the game's creation. In the Nintendo 64 version of the game, these textures appear perfectly as they are in the fixed version, but in the PC version and every other version of the game that I'm aware of, these textures are oddly broken, making them look rather checkerboardy, such as the roof of the hallway that acE is currently driving through, or some of the fences on guardrails on the catwalks that they'll drive over as well, being a bit weird. I'm not entirely sure what caused that mistake in development, but that is the explanation for the graphical differences there. acE not playing with the fixed textures and Dredge playing with them. And our race will begin now. Already looking remarkably synced, so I might not have to... I don't think I need a sync pause here. So an interesting thing to note about this track is that immediately as soon as they drop down there is a tiny amount of fast terrain. It's probably some of the silliest fast terrain in the game, but if you can utilize it, you should. After all, the way fast terrain works in this game is... Oh, and that's an unfortunate crash from Dredge. Any crashes on a track this short and relatively simple is going to be brutal. As our first crash of the track as well. Or of the match as well. Anyway, fast terrain, as I was explaining, uh, basically gives you a flat boost to the speed of your pod, and mathematically that means I want to be cooling when you're driving over it, as that will give you the most change to your average speed as you navigate the track. Yeah, with the death there, unfortunately Dredge is going to be significantly behind, and acE is very likely to just win from here, as with a track like this, especially given that this is acE's pick, it's unlikely he's going to find a way to crash here. He's banging it out. This is really excellent work. Looks to be possibly a 5-second lead for acE at this very moment, and you really can't make that up in a single lap here without a death. There's just no way to do it. So acE can really take it easy from here, although he probably doesn't know it, but, you know, he could take it easy from here, and there's not really anything Dredge could do. As long as acE doesn't do anything too risky. And yeah, there are no longer any places to really fail here. acE, leaping for the out-of-bounds finish, will finish with a 2:07.8, which is an extraordinary time. And Dredge finishing with a 2:12, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, that's definitely a tough one. Hellfire now responds by temporarily banning OD Mandrell. acE will, in all likelihood, repeat his earlier temp ban of Inferno, unless he has something else in mind. Indeed, he temp bans Inferno again. Interesting note is that Hellfire does still have 3 force points remaining. Has not used any of them yet, so possible we could be seeing one of those come out. And indeed, as Goof has very presciently predicted, Hellfire has selected the Bunta training course. Hellfire has been very openly grinding this track in search of the 134, and it's definitely a track they have practiced a significant amount on recently. And that's, I mean, it's a comfort zone. It's a comfort zone, and that's what you got to go for in these kinds of things. You got to go for what you're strong at. The Grabvine Gateway pick is a perfect example of that, and so is this. The only really interesting piece of tech that Bunta Training Course has is this pair of jumps that players will be performing. As you see, acE attempting the first one there. And if you get that nice jump, you can cut out a good amount of the track, get a nice straight line across that you normally couldn't get. And the second jump, acE will warm up here for us. Also cuts out a decent amount of track, and those two jumps combined could save about a second, probably. It's nothing, you know, too humongous, but in the grand scheme of the track, which is about 1 minute and 35 seconds at this level to complete, it really adds up, and your skill at performing those jumps is very important. Yeah, indeed, Bunta Training Course is one of those tracks where there's not a lot that can really go wrong. And it's not really a very punishing course either. Most players, as Goof has said, most top players can really just rip off whatever they're strongest with, or pretty close to their strongest level, just off the rip, with very little preparation. And we see both players getting a 135 there in the warm-ups. So this could really be anybody's game. Alright, and our players are off. And a couple of good jumps right off the bat. There's unfortunately not going to be maybe too much to talk about on this track, as it's a very simple track with not a lot of moving parts. Really, the pods themselves are the only moving parts to speak of here. And flying through the lap 1, extremely even. Slight advantage to Dredge, but incredibly, incredibly close. It's really impossible to say who has the advantage here. acE seems to have used a little bit more heat. The Dredge gets to hold it a little bit longer, so I think it's just dead even. I don't think there's any way to call it at this point. No one has a clear advantage. Seems like their heat strats are slightly different. acE's going to have a faster lap that time, but that's due to heat. So as they round it out, acE will be reaching max heat about here. Yeah, so they're going to just even up again here. This is going to be a photo finish in all likelihood, ladies and gentlemen, so get your cameras ready as they make the last jump, land on the final stretch, and boost across, attempting to burst into flames. I didn't even see who won. Oh, 135.7 for acE and 135.3 for Dredge. And yet another deathless race. It would have been really hype if Dredge had gotten the 134 right then. Yes, and for reference, that was about 200ths off of the tournament record, Goof's 135.374. acE simply says strong in response to Hellfire's time. Dredge definitely putting up a lot more of a fight than probably they even expected. They seem to be of the opinion that they were just going to bomb out of this match. I'm glad that hasn't happened. Now acE temporarily banning Juan Sandage. Hellfire temporarily banning Howler Gorge this time. Interesting. Previously had temporarily banned Baru Coast. Possibly we might see that. And it looks like it. Here comes Baru Coast. Now both players will, in all likelihood, pick Ben Quadinaros here. There's really no reason not to at this level of play. acE definitely will. Dredge might go for something a little bit different, but I would lean on probably them picking Ben here. And that's a good point. They did go Mars on Bunta Classic as well. And Goof has mentioned in chat that Hellfire will probably go Mars this time as well. So it's very likely, yeah. It looks like that's what's going to happen. So we're going to get Ben versus Mars, this time on Baru Coast instead of Bunta Classic. It'll be very interesting to see. Baru Coast is another one of the very difficult tracks in this game. There are many sections here that are either just flat out brutal, like this section acE is driving through right here, or deceptively brutal, where they look like they would be relatively easy, like the section that acE is now currently driving through, but are in fact rather difficult. You can die a lot in that little couple of turns there. It's harder than it looks, especially considering that you're moving, very, very fast. I guess that's the name of the game. Dredge is going to have the maneuverability advantage with Mars, which will grant a higher margin of error in terms of how much maneuverability you can have and how you can get around the track. But in terms of flat-out speed, Ben Quadinaros can't be beat, and there are enough straightaways on this track that Ben Quadinaros is simply the best pick. However, if you're the kind of player that crashes a lot, or if you haven't very practiced on a track this brutal and you will crash a lot, going for the easier to use pod is a very strong idea. Yeah, you can lose control with Ben here quite a lot. I believe this is probably the single hardest track in the game to use Ben on. Unless you want to do it on FMR as well, which you probably shouldn't. Countdown has fired, and we will begin right now. And both players jump straight ahead. Making the first jump of the track, landing on this section, which is identical to the ending of one of the ending sections of Grabvine Gateway. A little fun fact. A lot of sections in these tracks are reused, but it's all good. In fact, I think it makes it cooler. Now, ooh, acE is very scary through this section. Even optimal bend usage here is very scary. And it looks like they're actually about even. Although acE might have a slight lead. Difficult to tell. Oh, and that's brutal. Dredge takes a death on the section I mentioned earlier as being deceptively difficult. Indeed, that can kill you very easily if you're not careful. And acE rounds out lap 1 just as Dredge takes a second crash in the city, and that is heartbreaking. 2 deaths on lap 1. It's the first multiple death race either of these players have had in this track, and oh no. It looks like Dredge is forfeiting actually after the 3rd death on lap 1. And that's really unfortunate. And that hopefully doesn't result in tilting. That kind of ends the match there. I hope that Dredge can bounce back from that, because that's really brutal and that's not what you want to see. But yeah, 3 crashes on lap 1 and it's basically over. And now we get to see acE finish out the track with Ben. There probably isn't going to be too much more to say at this point, unfortunately. acE taking a little bonk there. Not what you want to see. Make sure to mark your bingo card every time I say that's not what you want to see, because that's like one of my favorite sentences, apparently. Yeah, 117 is extraordinarily strong. Also, mark your bingo cards every time I say something like extraordinarily strong or blazingly fast. acE coming through the nice little beach here, dodging the Baru heads, diving into the Bendy Bendy. That's its official name, as it's known by the developers of the game. True fact. And rounding out the curve, entering the city in any second now. There we are, entering the city. And, I mean, any sub 4 minute Baru coast time is extremely good. But time like this, which looks like it's possibly, yeah, like a 351, that's insanely good. That is amazing. And acE will take the lead 3-2. And indeed, that run actually is now the new tourney record for Baru Coast. So very well done to acE there for breaking Mikey Berger's tournament record. Hellfire temporarily banned Mahonic, and acE temporarily banned Fire Mountain Rally. And Hellfire immediately picked Mongaza Speedway, which is a pick often preferred by people who just want the game to end, or whose music playlist might have just ended. It's definitely a volatile track. Any little mistake could throw you off by the 1/10 that you could have won by. So Mongaza Speedway is the shortest track in the game by quite a lot. It's not even really close. Doug Derby is, I believe, the second shortest at about 1 minute and 30 seconds. 31, 32 seconds is the fastest times. And the times here are going to be in the neighborhood of 39 to 40 seconds for the full 3 lap. So extremely short. 3 laps being shorter than most tracks, single laps. Also, less likely for us to see any more deaths on this one, as acE has so far gone the entire match without crashing. She'll probably continue to do that as well. both of these players, I think, can very consistently hit 39s. So this will, in almost all likelihood, unless there's a death like that happens during the match, we're very likely to see two 39s coming out, and it's going to be a matter of tenths, and just who's that little bit faster on that one iteration of the run. This is probably the closest thing to a coin flip that you can get in a tournament match. And now we begin. This is it. A very, very short track with... in this case, I think I will throw in the 1 second sync pause, just because both players are very likely to hammer it out. So I think it is worth it. It's going to be difficult to follow in real time exactly who's ahead, because of how fast it is. It looks like Dredge is taking things actually slightly cleaner overall, although acE uses a little bit more heat. It's going to be very close, coming down right to the wire. Ooh, that didn't look good, but I think acE is going to take it. Oh no, I was totally wrong. Actually, Dredge took it by about 3/10. That's very convincing W for Dredge. Dredge must not have bonked. I thought that Dredge either bonked or scraped on that final stretch, but I think they just narrowly avoided it. Optimal. And yet another deathless race in the bag. Dredge looking to be an incredibly strong contender, and it's probably at least a little bit tragic that, this could easily be their last tournament match this year. They still have to break serve on one of acE's picks, which we should be getting an example of shortly, as acE temporarily bans Wand Sandage, and Hellfire temporarily bans Abyss. So previously had temp banned Howler Gorge, but now switches to Abyss, and acE picks Beto's Wild Ride. Still, no force points used from either player, as we head into race number 7 out of 9. No force points needed here. This is just pure, clean racing. What more could you ask for? It will be interesting to see if the players go for the tent shortcut on this track, as it saves the least amount of time out of all of the Androprime tracks that have that tent shortcut. It saves the least amount of time, but it does save some time if you can pull it off right. It will be interesting to see if they use that. And Beto's Wild Ride is a quite difficult track. It's one of the more difficult tracks of the amateur circuit. There are some things about it that make it relatively tricky. These tight corridors that you have to drive through, especially in these tunnels, and in a lot of cases you'll also have either fast terrain, like if you're going through the tent shortcut, or you'll just have worsened controls, like over this ice field, where if you have the wrong setup going over that ice field, correcting it and getting out alive is extraordinarily difficult. That can really make it tricky, and you have to be relatively precise. It's definitely not one of the more brutal tracks in the game, but it's tricky, and people sleep on how tough this track can really be, especially if you're not practiced on it. There are a lot of places in this track where you can just die. And it looks like Dredge is going to be going for the 10 shortcut here, and that's a very strong idea. Especially if you can pull it off like that. Yeah, that looks pretty clean. Some people are very vocally not fond about that wall that you have to climb up in the tent shortcut there. I don't know about that. Sounds like a skill issue to me. And Horsefinger in chat is asking if this is a PS1 or N64 game. This game did come out on Nintendo 64, but both of our players tonight are using the PC version of the game, which is widely considered to be probably the strongest version of the game, as it tends to run the best. You have very little in the way of input lag, a lot of really good visibility, and things of that nature that make the game a bit easier to play at the higher levels. And in fact, actually, both of our players tonight are playing with the keyboard. Both of these players use keyboard. Neither of them are on controller, which is rather unusual for top-level players. Not bad unusual, but... All right, our players are off. This is it. This is live. And into the first bit. acE does lose the boost, and that's going to cost a little bit of time. It's not heat that can't be made up later, but it's kind of difficult to do so. So Dredge definitely looking basically optimal here. Maybe slightly wide, and acE is going to almost underheat a bit there, but does make it through. Pretty good heat. So now they cut across this little bit of off-road terrain here just to get the best possible line up to the left side. And then crossing over to the 10th shortcut coming up, which acE is not using, but Dredge is using. And that's very interesting to see. Dredge did pull about a half a second lead off of lap 1, and with the usage of the 10th shortcut, that could stand to grow even further just based off of that. And both players are very close to one another right now. There's not a clear leader. I think Dredge still has a bit of a lead at this moment. Both players executing very well. As now they approach the pillar section once more. Dredge taking the slightly better line across that. And 10th shortcut part 2. They make it in. acE skips it once again, now probably about a 1 second lead for Dredge. Good wall climb. Good bridge crossing from both players. Maybe a little bit shaky for Dredge there. They might have lost a bit of time. Ooh, and there is acE's first crash of the match. And that is going to be huge and probably seal it for Dredge. This is absolutely the break they needed in order to break serve. If they can hold this, they can have match point against acE. As the first player to win 5 tracks will win the match. And Dredge is banging it out with a 2:39.8, an incredibly strong time coming out of Dredge, and a 2:45 for acE with their very first death of the match. And Dredge has now officially broken serve. There will be maximum of 2 more tracks played in this match tonight, and Dredge need only win one of them, while acE needs to win both in order to take it home. acE has temporarily banned Juan Sandage. Dredge has a good chance to, again, continuing to temporarily ban Abyss. And it looks like acE is on the verge of picking Inferno and forcing skips, possibly also taking a lot of pods out as well. This will be interesting. This is going to be acE's final pick. He will not get another chance to pick, so he's going to be using a bunch of force points here. He has picked Inferno, used his first force point to force skips, and he has used his other 2 force points to remove Ben Quadraneros, Bulls Ruhr, Aldar Beto, and Mahonic, adding up to a total of 5 pod bans on this track. In all likelihood, I think this means Mars Guo Mirror here. So both players will be picking Mars and doing the Inferno skip with that. I don't expect to see any funny business here. And this is a real blink and you'll miss it, as I would assume both of these players know this skip very well. And this is one of the shortest skips in the game, as it can and often is done in less than 30 seconds for 3 laps. It involves climbing up this wall, spinning around and landing on the later section of the track that happens to be running parallel to the one you start on. And then climbing up another wall, to return to the original section of track and passing the finish line. And then, let's see if either of them go for it in this warm-up. No, they're not going for the fast lap 3. Maybe you've got the setup for it, but there you go. 25-second from acE on that warm-up there. That just goes to show you how this skip is very powerful, and I mean, it basically completely cuts out the entire track, so it's barely even the same track anymore. And for that reason, a lot of people don't even bother to learn it. I mean, can you imagine how embarrassing it would be if you went into a match and you didn't know the Inferno skip and someone picked it against you? That would be pretty tragic, I think. But both these players are high enough level that they know the skip, and that won't be a problem for them. Ooh, it's a good point. This is one of Hellfire's biggest weak points. I know Hellfire has a lot of experience with some skips, but this definitely seems to be something that they're a lot shakier on. They don't seem to be very confident in it in the warm-ups here. So it looks like it'll be a good pick for acE then. But honestly, all Hellfire needs to do is execute. And they can make an upset here. It could happen. Stranger things have happened. See, there, acE crashes in the warm-up here. If that happens and Dredge doesn't crash, there's a very, very good chance they could take it. This is, I think, the real deal. It's too short to bother sinking, I believe. acE nails at lap 1. Dredge does as well, but significantly slower. acE nails at lap 2. And is looking like he's on pace to nail it lap 3 with a 23.87. Very, very, very good time here. Dredge also setting a good time as well. Oh, their lap didn't count, and that's unfortunate. So they'll just take a DNF. Oh well. Even if their lap had counted, they still would have lost the track, so that's rather unfortunate. And now we have a tied game going into race 9. 4-4. Hellfire's pick. Winner goes to play Metallica, and the loser is eliminated. It all comes down to this. Hellfire temp bans Aldarbedo. acE temp bans Fire Mountain Rally. We know that's a track that Hellfire is sometimes an enjoyer of. Let's see what Hellfire has cooking for their final chance to beat acE and continue forward in the tournament. Ooh. Looks like it might be a spicy pick here. Hellfire seems to be loading up Abyss skips. They do have a chance to use more force points to remove other racers. And given the hesitation in submitting this, which they have selected but not hit the send button on yet, looks like they're doing, and they will. Hellfire has removed Aldarbedo, Clegg Holdfast, and Juan Sandage, and forced skips on Abyss. Juan Sandage is really the main concern for removal there, as that's the pod most players are going to attempt to use for this skip. Now, the best remaining available pod might be something like Arc Bumpy Roos, or possibly just Mars Guo. It really depends. I think Bumpy's acceleration and gives him probably the edge, I would say. And indeed, the best tournament time using available pods here was set by Arc Bumpy Roos. So, and it does look like that's what Dredge is going for. So, it's very possible if Dredge has prepped this that they could use Bumpy's advantages to their advantage, and they could take this over acE. But at the same time, Mars Guo is Mars Guo, and he's nothing if not consistent, so... This will be exciting. Very hard to tell from these warm-ups, as Abyss skips can go any which way at just a moment's notice. The players also do have an extended period of time to warm up on these skips, so we have probably about 2 minutes until, they make their main attempt. And it's a fair enough pick as well, because Abyss Skips is, another blink and you'll miss it, really short track. And it's the sort of thing that you've prepped no Juan Sandage on here. If you've prepped Bumpy, then you can really make things happen. But who knows? It could be a bad play. Only time will tell. Really, whether it's a good or a bad play is entirely dependent on your ability to make said play work. And that might seem cliched, but it's also true. Yeah, indeed. Arc Bumpy Roost has the lower traction, which definitely hurts. Overall, this might be an even match between Bumpy and Mars, at least depending on how these players use them in a tournament setting. Even if in an IL setting, Bumpy is strictly better. In a tournament setting, the difficulty curve in using Bumpy for this might be just enough to edge out Mars. But if, something bad happens and maybe Ace crashes like that but gets a bad respawn instead, you never know. But this is what it all comes down to. Flipping around, driving up a wall and doing a 180. That's what we've staked this entire match on. And you know what? There's probably no other way this was going to end. I wouldn't have had it end any other way if I could have chosen, so, you live and you laugh and you love, as they say. And our players are off. Not much point in sinking this one, as it'll be over probably very fast, and it looks like Ace slips off the wall immediately. That is really, really bad for Ace. Oh no, Ace having significant trouble climbing this wall. That is really, really bad. Dredge has already finished 2 flips, and Ace has yet to finish 1. Dredge takes a little bit of a crash there, but they shouldn't be demoralized by it. They need to get up this wall one final time. That's all they need to do. Flip around now and pass that finish line for the win. Dredge will take it and continue on in the tournament to face Metallica, while Ace is going to see an early elimination. That is a definite upset. Wow. What a match. Unfortunately, it looks like Ace won't be able to do the interview, as he really has to go. And that's probably fair enough. But perhaps we could get Hellfire in here for a little debriefing. Alright, welcome in. Congratulations on the W.
A regrettable W.
Perhaps. I mean, I know that you possibly weren't so interested in continuing on in the tournament, but this is a big upset, so I mean, there's that, right?
Well, I mean, Ace did. He was drunk, I assume. So, but I mean, maybe that was helping. I think it started to wear off.
Yeah, I mean, he raced very cleanly. Like it took him like 5 races to crash.
Yeah, like I threw immediately on death rows, I think.
Yeah, that was unfortunate to see.
It was a stupid.
Brew is also pretty brutal.
Brew Coast is a non-functioning track, as far as I can tell. Just doesn't work in tournament ever.
Yeah, indeed. That's really terrifying to see. So I kind of wanted to break down a couple of your picks, because after the Brew Coast, you picked Mongaza Speedway. Was that just a function of wanting it to be over as fast as possible?
Yeah.
I kind of figured
it's half a function of trying to get it over with, and also it's Mongaza Speedway, which is like a 50-50 anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for sure, and it worked out in your favor.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't get a 39 at all. If he did, he would have beaten me, I think.
Yeah, you definitely, you looked pretty hairy at the very last corner there.
The last turn.
Like I thought for a second that you bonked or scraped, and I called out that that Ace had won it until I saw the times. So that was pretty scary.
That turn is rough. Surprised I survived it. Pretty sure it looked like I was clipping into it, huh?
Mm-hmm. It did.
So dumb.
Yeah, the Beto's Wild Ride was cool too. We were surprised to see you use tent strats there. Can you talk a bit about that?
So it's not like I don't think it's legit tent strats because I just boost through most of it. But I figured out like 6100 to 6600, like you can get into tents so easily, like with no issue doing it. It just makes that one turn after the bridge a little bit harder, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it worked out. I don't know if it saved too much time. It looked like you were still neck and neck, even though Ace wasn't using tent at all.
Yeah. Yeah, like I haven't saved, like when I tried to do that strat before in ILs, like it never really saved any time compared to just doing no tent.
Mm-hmm. Well, Goof Rush in chat is saying that boosting like that will still save time over no tent.
Yeah, so I mean probably, but like I was having a hard time with it earlier, trying to get it to save any time.
I also wanted to comment on the really awesome Grabvine Gateway that you had, the 410, which is awesome. Really well done. That was really fun to watch.
Thank you.
I know.
I'm glad I finally got to pick it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't let you on that track, so getting to see
too many cowards.
And you executed too, which is always nice when you get to pick.
Yeah, I was glad. I was so afraid of like a breakdown on GVG. I was like, this cannot go wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny too that you were full 7 seconds ahead of Ace, despite the fact that he didn't die at any point either.
Really? Wow,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, that was really interesting to watch. That was probably one of the highlights of the match. Yeah, Boonta training course pick as well. I kind of called out that it would be really funny if you got the 134 in that.
No, I wish that. No way. It's way too hard.
But you were actually very close to taking the tournament record for Boonta training course. You were about 200ths away from it. So that's pretty dope.
That's kind of sad. Come on, who has a tourney record for it?
Goof.
Not even Dom. What is this?
I don't know if Dom likes playing that in tournament very much. Or maybe other people just took it away from him. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, it just seems so easy for him. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't pick it, you know?
Yeah. Fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, definitely a very interesting match overall.
Well, I'm glad it went better than the last several train wrecks I've led.
Yeah, it's always good when you put on a good show for the fans, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That was like the main thing with like choosing all these hard tracks. So like the first like track we were deciding on, I had to allow either Death Rose or Boonta Classic. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make Ace work for his money and just go on Boonta, even though I'm bad at it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, if that's one of the tracks that you've really been, you know, busting on and really working on recently, you know.
I don't know why I took the Boonta Classic.
I mean, it was interesting to see as a first track. I don't know if I've ever, maybe, you know, aside from like the Gentleman's Subalbanican thing, it's not very common to see that be a first track. So
really,
it was cool to see.
I'm surprised he didn't ban it at all. I guess he was pretty confident on it though.
Yeah. I mean, you both looked very clean on it, so.
Yeah, it was all right. I was still really slow though.
Well done. Well, you've got Metallica coming up.
Oh, great. Lucky me.
So that could be another really interesting match. Maybe you'll also win that one 5-4.
Debatable.
Honestly, well, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't happen anyway because that's where you're gonna start getting into the best of 13. So.
Oh God.
Yeah, you're gonna have to prep quite a few picks if you want to win.
I'm gonna die. I'm gonna turn into a skeleton.
Well, very well done here. You did some great work, and that was very entertaining. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for commentating at this wacky hour, Ronnie.
It's no problem at all. And thank you to Speed Gaming for the host of our tournament. Couldn't have done it without y'all. And thank you to everyone in chat for watching. You're all great. So, thank you everybody. I don't believe there are any currently scheduled matches upcoming because we've reached the point in the tournament where everybody who's good at scheduling has been eliminated. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So, keep posted, and have a good night, everybody.